Hello, this is Paul Lennon again, and this is the third in the series of videos which I'm presenting to you and sharing with you, where I'm, talking and commenting on my book, Our Father Maciel, Our Father who art in bed, and I've and Sentimental Dubliner in the Legion of Christ. I wanted to let you know that there are two other versions almost of the same thing. I want to make you aware of those before we continue. Uh, the second edition, you might say, of this book is called A Naive and Sentimental Dubliner in the Legion of Christ, Surviving and Thriving After Knowing Pedophile Psychopath Founder Father Maciel. And these, of course, are in book and Kindle edition. So if any of my fans want to get a more recent edition or an update, this would be a way to go. I've also wrote it almost a kind of another edition of this very same book. It's kind of like an early edition which I had discarded when my book was reviewed by other people, and I went back to a kind of an original version of my book. And this original version had 30 instances of where I felt that the Legion of Christ and the superiors, the leaders, had used lies and deceit. And that's why this version is called Deceit and Lies in the Legion of Christ. As you know, we Irish love alliteration. So listen to that again. Deceit and Lies in the Legion of Christ. Regnum Christi Federation, because we have to put in this new name that the Legion is morphing into, Regnum Christi. It's kind of morphing into the name of the lay branch. And recently it has called itself a federation, which is supposed to be the overarching name of these two or three or whatever subdivisions of the same thing founded by Father Maciel. Anyway, this is called Revised, Abbreviated, Original Version of Our Father who art in bed. Thank you for your time. Anyway, let's get back to where we are. And I'm going to be kind of summarizing some of the book. I'm going to be running through it, making it quicker now, hopefully lighter, and so for the readers. And first of all, where are we now? We will go to chapter 2. We're beginning in chapter 2, but I'm not going to abound or digress in chapter 2, which is called, what is it called? Chapter 2, it has to start with an R. Am I right? Yes. Reminiscing. Sorry. Reminiscing. And this is about my life still in Dublin. So before entering the Legion. And every chapter, I think from here on out, starts with the quotation, a quote from Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. When I was writing my autobiography, I came upon Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and I found that there were lovely echoes, wonderful echoes in this book, parallels to some extent to my story. So I used that at the beginning of each chapter, which the quotations may or may not rhyme with my story, but in some cases they do. And one of my few reviewers found them very attractive and very interesting. So, chapter 2, Reminiscing. We're living in Fossa Avenue, Carver West, Dublin, Ireland. So writes Hermann Hesse. In the shade of the house, in the sunshine on the river bank, by the boats, in the shade of the sallow wood and fig tree, Siddhartha, the handsome Brahmin's son, grew up with his friend Govinda. There was happiness in his father's heart because of his son, who was intelligent and thirsty for knowledge. He saw him growing up to be a learned man, a priest, a prince among the Brahmins. There was pride in his mother's heart when she saw him walking, sitting down, and rising. Siddhartha, strong, handsome, supple-limbed, greeting her with complete grace. That was how everybody loved Siddhartha. He delighted and made everybody happy. End of quotation. So this chapter 2, reminiscing, again talks about my life and home, about my childhood. It's basically a happy childhood, parented by two excellent providers. Mom, kind of like the enforcer, you might say, and dad, more the, what's that beautiful word? I think he was more a nurturer. And that's how my sisters remember him, especially my sister Christine, who kind of succeeded me after I left. When I left, dad was probably sad, but then Christine, my youngest sister, uh, replaced me in this close relationship with my father. And she would ride the motorbike with him as he went on his activities on the weekends. So there were joys, a lot of joys, and in the family. And Mammy's family was very interesting. They're the O'Connors, and they were very, what's the word, charming, picturesque, what was the word? um, Characters, real Irish, real Dubliners from that time. So his brothers and sisters are her brothers and sisters are wonderful people. So we had stories about them in our lifetime, and her brother Jimmy, Uncle Jimmy O'Connor, was also very instrumental in getting me into a better private school, you might say, when I was entering the elementary school. He was instrumental in that. I don't know when I tell the story about Uncle Jimmy talking to one of his friends and putting in a word for me. So the Irish Christian Brothers at St. Vincent's, Glasnevin, which was a middle class neighborhood, would take me in, and I started off in 1A class elementary school around the age of 7 or 8. Anyway, here are the pictures which my friend Alberto got for us, processed for us. This is me maybe I think it's making my first communion or something, and Patty is making like dress for confirmation. So I think this is it. This is from our time. So again, skipping through this, what do we have here? Yeah, very much bonded with Daddy and with Mommy. And as you know, uh, they say the Irish mother has a great influence on her son, and unconsciously, or I was probably influenced by her to enter the priesthood. Not that she shoved me in, but she certainly approved of it. So, and I think I was a little kid who was looking for approval, and a big sports fan. That was my passion at that time. I have a little paragraph saying I was part of hero worship. My hero was an English soccer player called Tom Finney, uh, who was not as famous at that time as Stanley Matthews, but Tom was shorter, like me, and he was a lefty, like me, and he was a really a very gentlemanly type of player, a very fair player, and plenty of skill, hard work, and sportsmanship. Uh, I was Tom Finney. I would identify. I was Tom, and I remember, that I would do exercises in the morning with the window open. My sisters, my family thought I was crazy when I do my breathing exercise because that's what footballers had to do. Soccer players, we had to do that in the morning, expand your lungs so that you'd be able to stand up and have a lot of stamina and stuff like that. And I also wanted to have my football boots, as we call them, like Tom Finney's. I wanted to lace them like Tom did. I wanted to tie them like Tom did. I wanted to dribble like Tom did. I was a very good dribbler. and for a long, long time. And then of course learned to shoot like him with the outside of the left foot and put a kind of a curve on the ball. This was the beginning of those fancy curve balls brought in by the Brazilians later, who were the masters at this game of the floating balls and the ball zigzagging to the goalkeeper. Um, that's it. That's Tom. And school. As I say, I was a happy child when I began first year at St. Vincent's School at 7.5 years of age. I was at that age. I was a really happy little kid. I was full of energy. I'd zoom around the schoolyard. And I think they called me the Mighty Atom or something. And for some reason, I was kind of like the leader of a little group of guys. Uh, I wasn't aware of that, but I think I was. I was a very good sportsman, and I had a nice personality, and I was friendly, gentle, I suppose, and I was very funny. I had a very sharp wit, and probably was able to poke fun at the teachers, which would have been very popular too. A bit of a smart aleck, which I still am to this very day. I had my friends, Tommy Shocker Gallagher, uh, Matty Donahue. And I had Tony Matty Donahue. Yeah, he was from County Louth, and he spoke with that lovely Northern Ireland accent, which Rory, what's his name, the golf man, he, talking like from the north of Ireland, and I thought that was really quaint. We were best friends. I was best friend with Matty Donahue. He was he was studying jiu-jitsu at that time, the martial arts, and I learned a little bit about him. How to throw a guy over your shoulder and that kind of thing. Anyway, Tommy Kernan, he was a very, very nice kid, very polite, very nice kid. And I think I was hiding my shyness under a cloak of bravado. Page 45 in my autobiography. Talk about the holidays, the vacations we had, that even though we were a relatively poor family, and my parents were wonderful providers, and every year we had a month's holidays by the sea. I think it was Bray, County Wicklow. So it was a beautiful place, beautiful sand dunes, beautiful wide beach. And my parents were able to rent or sublet or something, a cabin or a hut there for us to spend the whole week of August every year. So thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mommy. And Daddy would be off 2 weeks from his job at the printers at Alex Thomp's and Son and Company Limited there in Glasnevin. He would take us 2 weeks off, the first 2 weeks in August, and he'd be with us. The whole family would be there, Daddy, Mammy, and the 5 children. And I also tell a funny story here about when I was coming into adolescence and stuff. Uh, I committed a sin because there were these two girls who I think had a kind of a crush on me, and it was not mutual, so they were annoying me. And I think one day I lost my patience. It was rainy, and I ran after them and I hit one of them with my brolly, with my umbrella, which was a serious sin. I remember the mother came up to complain to my house about Paul hitting her daughter. And I was in bed at that time. I was kind of scared stiff that something would say. I was upstairs in the bedroom and I heard my mom opening the door and the woman coming around and complaining. And my mother saying, "How dare you? My son Paul would never do a thing like that." Slammed the door in her face. Mommy, she was quite a character. Now we come to chapter 3, another or, responding to the call. And again, start off with our lovely quotation from Siddhartha. Chapter 3, responding to the call. And what's going to happen here? Yeah, oh God, this is going to be, we'll see. Anyway, Siddhartha, which I hope you'll enjoy. Siddhartha had begun to feel the seeds of discontent within him. He had begun to feel that the love of his father and mother, and also the love of his friend Govinda, would not always make him happy, give him peace, satisfy, and suffice him. He had begun to suspect that his worthy father and his other teachers, the wise Brahmins, had already passed on to him the bulk and best of their wisdom, and they had already poured the sum total of their knowledge into his waiting vessel. And the vessel was not full. His intellect was not satisfied. His soul was not at peace. His heart was not still. Siddhartha. End of quote. Now, this Siddhartha, Paul Lennon, I mean, I was a kid. You know something about me now. I was a fervent Catholic. I would go to Mass every Sunday. I think at one time go to Mass every day of the week. I was an altar server. And I also became a member of the Legion of Mary through a friend of mine. And that's kind of, what's the word? Kind of indicative of the kind of person I was. Because I joined the Legion of Mary not so much because I was really enthused about the Legion of Mary, but because a friend of mine insisted. He kind of persuaded me. So I was persuasible. I was a persuasible kid, 14, 15 years of age. And, you know, when the Legion came on when I was 17, apparently I was still pretty persuasive. And maybe I said yes to the most persuasive of the recruiters who were coming through my school at that time. Let me just explain right away that during my last year of high school, at a leaving certificate, because we were in the Christian Brothers school, Catholic school, everybody was Catholic, our teachers were Catholic. Um, I think the most people who came through to present career choices to us were Catholic priests and missionaries. I don't remember other people. Maybe there were other people in other mm, other careers coming through to talk about their careers and inviting us to make a career choice, which was all pretty immature or premature, excuse me, at the age of 17. But I remember there were several priests, and there was uh, I said yes. Actually, I was interested in the Dominicans, but then I mean, as I say, James Quandro came along with his Mexican charm, and as I say, what did they say? He could charm the birds out of the trees, and you know, me and two other fellows fell for it. We might say we were charmed. We joined the Legion, but so that was where I was, that kind teacher. In this chapter, yeah, I'm talking about that I was a mass server. I got to know the priest pretty well in my parish. There was no scandal. I did not see or did not experience any priest scandal at that time. We're talking late 50s, early 60, 61 when I joined in Dublin in our parish. The most precious blood, excuse me, that's the name of our parish. And so nobody, the most scandalous of all was, of our priest was Father Kavanagh. Kavanagh. And he was scandalous because he said Mass so fast that they called him Flash Kavanagh. So he had lots of people going to his Mass. I forget what time it was, 10 o'clock or something on Sunday morning. And a lot of men and working class men would go to his Mass because it was a quickie. You know, they could come out of Mass quick and grab the newspapers on the church railings and start strolling home after fulfilling their religious duties, reading the newspapers on the way home. So there you go. And that's how it starts about talking in my first contact with Father James. Daddy, Mammy. My mammy went to Mass every Sunday and received Holy Communion. She said her prayers every day and taught us how to pray. In May, she had us on our knees in the living room saying the Rosary in family, according to the teaching of Father Peyton. The family that prays together stays together. In reality, though, Mammy was more influenced by a handsome local Dominican priest, she respected and revered the clergy. The priesthood was clearly a prestigious profession and way of life. Though I had no inkling of it at this time, it, it made a lower class family middle class and proved to all that ours was a good and successful family. A little paragraph about sex, and the sex was basically not mentioned at all in our family or in our whole contour of extended family. When I talk with my sisters, and I did so as recently as yesterday, we talk about our aunts, who would never talk about sexual matters whatsoever. Um, it was taboo subject. Taboo subject. I talk about a little bit about my first crushes. So, 15, 16, 17, at least I would say, I don't know why I should say this, sexually repressed, I suppose. I'm not going to say why, all the ins and outs of that, but at least I was emotionally alive and affectionate and knew what it was like to like a girl and, my first crushes and stuff like that. Very, very romantic, very romantic. Yeah, don't. A certain smile, I was singing me. Really, isn't this incredible how we do things? I mean, here I am singing Johnny Mathis, but it's really this is me. There's a certain face, a certain smile, and what's that? Take an unsuspecting heart on a merry chase. A fleeting glance can say so many what wonderful things. Suddenly you know why your heart sings. Anyway, here we are, the end of chapter 3. And I'm going to stop here today because that's 22 minutes or so here in this, and we can make it sharp, get out of here quickly, and get on to the next chapter and wrap them up rather quickly as we get into the more important part of the story, which is my life in the Legion. And the next part will be getting to Salamanca and that first impression, that first shock, uh, shock slash perhaps trauma of entry into the Legion and being overwhelmed by by the subconscious probably which was rebelling against this step, this giving myself over, this surrender. Take care and be safe, my dear friends. We're all in this together. Um, I think about you and keep you in my prayers and heart until the next time we meet. Thank you.